Well, Matt, I hope you learned your lesson that cheating in Fortnite is not okay. Epic has sued you, and they've made you tweet about it. Basically, just apologize to everyone for cheating, taking all that prize money. It's just, this is...
How much prize money was it again? I forget.
It was, it was like thousands of dollars, Matt. Thousands of dollars. Yeah. And you donated it to that charity for children injured by cheaters. So now
the question I have is for this person that I hired, right? Because I hired someone to cheat for me, right?
Sure. Clara? Who are you talking about? Was it Clara? Did Clara get on your computer?
I only heard about this story through my chat, and they said that they hired someone to cheat for them or something. And I was like, well, then why did that person who apparently is good enough to win competitions cheating for other people when they could just enter the competition themselves and just win? And I found that strange.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's a great excuse. That's kind of the Clara excuse, It's like, oh man, Clara's been in here installing cheats on my computer.
Okay. I got it.
I mean, maybe he did that, but either way, like, does it matter if
he's still cheating? Yeah.
In fact, if I hired somebody to cheat for me, I don't think I would even go out of my way to tell people that that's what I did. Like, it doesn't make you any less guilty, and it just means that you paid more to get caught, essentially. So it just makes you look dumber at the end of the day.
Why? Don't cheat out there. Come on, kids.
Yeah. Well, so the story, and for anyone who's catching up, is kind of wild because most companies don't really deal with cheaters on an individual level. They're usually just working on new anti-cheat solutions and maybe going after major cheat manufacturers. But other than that, they don't deal with the individual cheaters unless there's a tournament involved. And there was...
I imagine it's because there was prize money on the line and they won.
Yeah, so there was a Fortnite tournament with real prize money. One of the guys who won and got some money, turns out was cheating. Epic found out. They sued the guy. They got all the prize money back. They donated it to a charity. And then they, as part of the lawsuit, made him humiliate himself online by saying, like, I cheated, don't cheat, I'm a bad guy, kind of publicly, like, humiliation. And I was like, whoa, way to go.
I don't know if that's public humiliation other than just apologizing.
Well, they made him admit to it, right? Like, it could have just been a lawsuit behind the scenes that nobody ever hears about. But instead of that, they said, no. Part of our settlement, and I'm sure they made him do it because they're like, we'll just sue you for more money unless you do this.
He had to walk down the street. Everyone was pointing.
He had to knock on all of his neighbors' doors and apologize for cheating in Fortnite.
Shame.
I mean, I think it's kind of epic. I mean, pun intended, maybe. I don't know.
No,
but
you didn't intend that.
I did not intend that. But for a company to just be like, no, you're not cheating in our tournament. Not only are we going to sue you and win, but we're going to embarrass you in front of everybody and make you admit that you're cheating. I don't know if that kind of policy would ever change the amount of people cheating in video games. It would have to be like widespread for years and years. But I don't know. Put a smile on my face because cheating is dumb. It ruins video games for everyone, right?
Yep. True.
Unless it's a single player game, then cheat away, man. You're not hurting anyone, right?
Right.
Mod your Kingdom Come Deliverance to become Space Invaders.
They already have mods for it, so. Yes.
I see you're wearing your Page outfit today, Matt.
Yes. Yeah, my Gambeson, yeah. Or Gambison, how do we pronounce it?
I don't know. I haven't played the game yet. Before we get into too many details, I just want to say welcome to the podcast, everyone. Welcome to Level With Me. If you guys want to support the podcast further, check out our Patreon linked in the video description. And if you become a Patreon member, you can watch us live, chat with us while we're doing it live, correct our many mistakes that mostly Matimio makes, and then hang around for the post-podcast show afterwards, where we really get into the details of, politics and all kinds of juicy stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, no. I saw a funny post on Reddit that was about a guy that was like, so I'm 60 hours into Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and I think I'm still in the tutorial portion of the game.
No, he's not. Unless he's the slowest character player ever, there's no shot.
I don't know.
You can put a stupid amount of time. It's almost to the point now. I love the game.
Yeah.
Let me clarify. Love the game. But like, it is almost where I'm like, okay, when is it gonna end? Like, I'm 65 hours in, and I probably have another 10, 15 hours left.
That's a lot.
Just the main story. And I've been doing like side stuff along the way, but like, yeah, it's a big boy.
It's funny, we were chatting about this a little bit last week too, but it's like, it depends, I think, a lot. For me, I've noticed where I am in life, what kind of depth I want with my games, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, 100-hour playtime, just give me 8 to 12, bro. I need to move on in my life. I need to get that sense of satisfaction for beating the game and then take a breather. Yeah. But I think in my younger years, it was like 200-hour playtime. Heck yeah, you know, like thousands of hours into Diablo games. Like, you just had more time, so you wanted a game that just kind of went on forever.
It also feels like if you're someone who wants to dedicate themselves, if you're a working dad, you can only put a couple hours in a week. You can really immerse yourself in this world for months potentially. And that's pretty cool, you know, especially if you're on a budget.
It's true. I mean, we talked about it because you're a streamer, so you gotta keep things varied. You know, you can't just pick one game forever. So you're kind of forced into this gameplay system where you move on after a certain period of time.
Right.
You probably get some sort of level of anxiety after you've been playing a game for too long. You're like, man, I like this. Yeah, because then you're like, do I play Factorio for the next month, or do I and lose my entire subscriber base, or do I vary it up and give the people what they want and give them the variety? So we have different factors tugging at us in terms of like what we want to play, but I do love games that I can sink into, and then I do have that same sense of anxiety of I can't put 80 hours into this game right now because that's irresponsible of me.
It's such a cool game though, and people are now coming out with like little details they've noticed along the way. One guy stole some person's clothes and stuff when they were sleeping. And then the next morning, the guy, he like walked up to him and he was complaining to another guard, like, the asshole took my shoes too. Like, who steals shoes? Like, stuff like that.
That's insane.
Apparently another one, he walked by the guard after he stole his clothes, and the guard looked at him and goes, "Hey, asshole's wearing my clothes." And then they chased after him. I was like, what? This is actually, so it's that kind of like world building and immersion. That's really amazing.
Yeah, those are the kind of games that you only dreamed about playing, you know, as a kid, where you're just like, what if everybody just responded in realistic ways to everything I ever did? Yeah, you don't expect it in a medieval simulator out of all games, right? But they're the ones who took it to that degree.
Right. There's so much variance. Like, the story, I think, doesn't change like an insane amount between, you know, playthrough to playthrough, at least in terms of, you know, the overall pushing the narrative forward. But you'll have like a mission where you need to get into a building and you can talk your way through it. Or if you failed it, I had people in my chat saying like, "Oh, I failed that skill check, that speech check. And I had to then storm the castle." And I was like, what? I just assumed this was how it was supposed to go. No. So he had to find a completely different way of getting inside of the building. I was like, oh, damn.
That's pretty dope, especially when the difference can be like talking your way through a situation versus storming a castle. And you're like, that's not even within the realm of similar experiences at all.
Right.
Yeah, that's dope.
It's cool. It's a very cool game.
We are spoiled as gamers, I tell you.
We are.
Yeah.
And then
we are not spoiled.
Complaining about games. I'm just like, I mean, sure, there's bad games out there, but man, like, just, I swear people don't enjoy games anymore. I don't even know what's happening anymore.
Nah, we're just addicted to complaining online, or at least a small vocal enough minority is to make it look like we're all upset about things. But I think most people are just enjoying games.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, when I go and chat with like people in real life. I'm like, oh, what are you playing? This cool. Nobody's sitting there like, oh, games are the worst, you know? Like, no.
Yeah.
There's usually some amazing game that everybody has that's like, this is the best. I can't stop playing it. You know?
Yeah. Yep.
Agreed. But you know who doesn't have it the best is game developers. A huge portion of the devs, I don't know if this is a huge portion, but at least a portion of the devs on Marvel Rivals just got laid off by
what?
Yeah, right?
They just what?
I know. So, you know that game that's exploding and taking the entire gaming world by storm? Marvel Rivals, published or owned by NetEase. Do you remember Thaddeus Sasser?
The name sounds familiar.
He was the lead producer on Battlefield Hardline. We met him a few times, I think.
Oh yeah. Wait, he was working for Rivals.
Yeah, I believe he just got laid off, and like his whole team that was working on Marvel Rivals. So imagine that you're working on this game that you're like, man, I hope we're putting our heart and soul into this. I hope it's a success. Oh man, it's the world's biggest success. This is fantastic. So much bigger than anybody could have imagined. And you're fired.
Laid off. Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe because they're scaling back and moving on to other. That's crazy though.
I saw my editor was saying he thought it might be due to like some of the tensions with Chinese companies. And NetEase is Chinese. And so, you know how like the TikTok ban?
Yeah.
The company that owns TikTok also publishes video games. And a bunch of those games had to scramble and find new publishers for the US because they got like banned by association. And so I think there's a lot of uncertainty within game publishing world. And if those games are published by a Chinese-owned company in the West anyway. And so the team for Marvel Rivals that got laid off is in the States. And so there's like a theory that might have something to do with that, where they're like trying to consolidate.
I feel like we're starting to turn into that guy with all the strings on the board now.
Yeah,
like if you look at the lines, it's clearly there.
Well,
look.
All I'm saying is like when I said that a team from Marvel Rivals got laid off, you went, what the heck are you talking about? Because the game is doing incredibly well. Right. So there's always consolidation after launch, right? You don't necessarily need all the people that help build the game to help maintain the game.
Correct.
So maybe that's the simple explanation, but the tinfoil hat explanation is political and tensions and all that fun stuff.
And there could be some validity in that.
Yeah.
I'd like to think usually the simplest explanation is usually the best explanation, but
sure.
there might be more behind it. Still though, like that entire team, that's wild.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Apparently they were heavily involved in R&D, so that might explain more of it, where you don't need as much R&D post-launch as you do pre-launch, but nonetheless, man, it's been interesting. I've known Thaddeus for a while. I haven't chatted with him in like...
He's a nice guy.
Yeah, he's a really nice dude. I haven't chatted with him in like over a year, but I do remember him jumping around to different projects, and I always found that interesting because when we met him, he was working on Battlefield Hardline, and then I met him later, and he was down in like San Diego working for Amazon Game Studios, AGS, I think, if they're even a thing anymore. That was back when Amazon was like producing like 7 games, and I think only 1 or 2 of them ended up coming out.
Yeah, very few of them.
He was working for them, and I think it's the project that he was on was one of the ones that got canned, with like the other ones. And I remember thinking when I met him, like, he has my dream job, which is to like be the lead producer designer on like these big game projects. And then I saw how many teams he had jumped around to over the course of years, and it made me think like, dang, game dev is hard when you're in the big industry,
Yeah.
And you're just like, we made a great product, and then you're like fired the next week. You're like, oh crap. Right. My employment.
You'd think especially the guys
nothing.
At the top too for that thick, for game development would have a little bit more job security too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would hope that the positions are well paying enough where if they lay you off, you're like, well, at least I made this much money doing this, or maybe there's some nice severance package. Who knows? But yeah, I know a lot of those guys like uproot their families and stuff and move around for these jobs. And it just seems so tumultuous. Like it really does seem kind of wild.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I'm surprised too.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's interesting.
That's depressing.
It is depressing. I think Marvel Rivals is still doing incredibly well. I don't think the layoffs.
I just checked. It had its average concurrent top peak was 300,000 on Steam alone. So
no, they got to be raking it in. So yeah, it's not a reflection of the performance of the game. We don't know what it is. Maybe that story will evolve a little bit over this next week and we'll have some more info for our next podcast. But yeah, it's an interesting one for sure.
Tough.
Yeah. So last week we were talking a little bit about my new sweet 5090 graphics card that is just so much better than everybody else's video card, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, either you're going to be modest or you're not, you know, I'm going for the not route.
Yeah.
So I got this card, and a couple of friends of mine have both sent me different articles that
treating you well, because I've heard there's been some issues with cables.
Yeah. Oh, you've heard about these, have you?
Yeah.
So there's I don't know if it was a huge story. There was a lot of mounting evidence back when the 4090 came out, where they're saying these power cables are kind of like at the limits of manufacturing, like rated voltages and stuff like that per cable, and there weren't a lot of safety measures in place that would protect your card if it started to exceed those levels, like the cable itself would melt or burn down. And Nvidia said for the cases in which it did happen, it was user error to installing the cable incorrectly and stuff like that. And people just sort of went, I don't know, you know, like it seems to be happening to a bunch of people, but we haven't really heard that story a lot prior 4090 era because those cards were so power hungry. Well, now the 5090 is even more power hungry, and the Founders Edition of the card, the one I have, by the way, has even less safety protocols for the cable needed. And some guy posted this big, like, it looks fairly scientific, but I'm not an engineer, so I can't read it and verify the legitimacy of it. But he said, like, according to this and like the safety standards for these cables that are being used, the failure rate on these cables is going to be astronomically high. Like, we're talking like in the, I don't know. He said like the low case scenario was like 8% failure rate. And then the high percent scenario was like
8% failure rate
was like in the, like, I don't know, it was like 60 or 70. It was some insanely high ratio. So this is a guy doing engineering math based on safety standards.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's some sort of hidden metric there that Nvidia knows about that we don't, but it doesn't make me feel great to read these reports about video card cables burning up and then going, should I play a game right now and risk burning my house down? Like,
right. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
That's not good PR. That's not what they want to hear.
No. Yeah.
So is your stuff okay? Like, you good,
I mean, it's been fine. I've been using the card. I've been playing it. It looks great. They updated the drivers, that was my only issue with the card. The first batch of drivers was a little finicky.
Yeah.
They jumped on it pretty quick, and I'm sure they got more drivers coming out soon. So on that front, I have not been disappointed with the card. I'm just nervous now. I'm like, okay.
Right.
Cool. Yeah. But they do just kind of keep up in that power curve for these cards, and the cable doesn't get any thicker, you know, and you're like,
doesn't.
Maybe we should.
At some point, I feel like, because there's different kinds of electrical outlets that you can have, like, in a home, right? You've got like your normal thing for just everyday electronics, and then you got stuff for like ovens, like
the 240.
Yeah,
whatever.
It's like, are we gonna start needing something like that for our goddamn gaming PCs in the future?
Yeah. There's going to be a giant plug on the wall, and they'll be like, oh, yeah, that's for the gaming PC. Yeah. You turn on actually, when I turn on my PC, like certain lights will flicker, you know, I'm like, zzz, zzz, yeah.
That's
So,
good.
yeah,
No,
it's
that's
good.
reassuring.
I
Yeah,
can
that's
see the
good.
power draw, get siphoned out of the rest of the house. And it's like
Yeah,
the fridge is less cold,
yeah,
Like, is
like a
this supposed to be
tube of
lukewarm in
toothpaste.
here? Yeah. I'm sure it's fine. I
Yeah,
on the bright side, I don't think the 5080 and the cards below it have the same issue.
I think it's just that 5090 is just so beefy.
Yeah. What's funny about it too is like it seems like a problem that could be solved by just creating a new cable, right? It's not like a problem that's like
Potentially.
inherent to like all these complex electronics on the board. It's literally just
Just the cable's just not up to snuff.
yeah, a better cable and a couple of little safety features in there that trip when they detect too much
When they
power
exceed.
draw on one thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's not that crazy to do, but for whatever reason, the safety is less on this card than it has been in the past, and in the past they've already been complaining about it. So,
well, I'll pray for your graphics card.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Yeah, you're
know.
welcome.
My computer's like in a closet with carpeting, and I'm just like, oh god, if it goes up, there goes the house, man. Like, I'm gonna have to put like a metal plate down below it or something.
Yeah, actually, may not be a bad idea.
I'm thinking about it. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm legit thinking about it now. Like, all right, time to beef up the fire retardant nature of my closet.
You just put the entire closet in
Tinfoil, wrap it in
tinfoil
tinfoil.
aluminum or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my god. It'll be fine.
It'll be fine. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. I have a bat safe for my lipos because I run RC cars, and some of them have batteries that are like this big. They're like bricks.
Oh, okay.
And since they're like lipo batteries, which are generally less safe, and when they fail, they explode into giant fiery balls. You have to keep them in
around the house.
No, you got to keep them in like basically I have a metal container that's designed to vent them properly if they explode. So yeah, I'm like, I'll just buy one of those for the computer now in case it explodes.
Safe.
Yeah. So, what you been playing, man?
Well, I've been playing a bunch of games. Which one would you like to talk about? Exoborne, Civilization, or Door Kickers, or Kingdom Come?
What are
you feeling? Got a selection here.
Civ 7. I want to hear about Civ 7.
Okay, so I'm not a big Civ guy.
Yeah.
The only Civ game I played was 5, and that was back in college. And funnily enough, I actually remember.
It is crazy to think how
game.
much time there has been between Civ games. Dear God.
Yeah.
I was in college. Well, I guess maybe for you. I think I just graduated. Yeah.
Yeah, you probably just because I was like a senior when I was playing it.
I didn't do the extra 2 years, to get my 4-year degree like you did, but
Yeah. Shut up. Anyways, so I'm not like a huge expert, and it took me some time to get into the flow and understand what's going on. But God damn it, those just one more turn games are insanely addictive. Like, I don't know how. Like, I'll be like, just one more turn, right?
Yeah.
In my head, I'll just say one more turn, and then hours go by, and I'm still saying just one more turn.
Yeah.
And it's silly. So it definitely has that going for it. It is very addicting. I'm really enjoying it. It's a little bit mixed right now in the community. Apparently, they've made some pretty big changes. For one, it now has like an age system where you have antiquity, exploration, and then like modern. And you know what happened in previous Civs games? You could play as a character. You'd start in the medieval age or whatever, and then you can get all the science you want, and you just skyrocket all the way until you're like nuking everyone, right?
Yeah.
While everyone else or you have tanks, and they're still running around with like cloth armor, right?
Yeah.
This doesn't have that. The way it works is that you have like little mini sessions where you go through the ages, and you have like a win condition for the age where you do your science victory, or you do your economy victory where you're getting a lot of money, and you'll get points at the end of that age that you can then spend on the next stage, right? So it gives you a little bit of an advantage on the next age, which is kind of cool. But what it does mean is that you don't get this really massive skill tree where you're working your way all the way down. It's like a hard reset in between
and
each
then
age.
Everybody starts off at the same age.
Not so. Yes,
No?
they start out
Yeah?
same. Yeah, same
Okay.
age. Yeah.
So you
Yeah,
can't, you're not nuking the cavalry that's coming over the hill, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Which was
Now,
always kind of a cool thing. If you could out tech somebody that hard,
Right.
you're just like, that's an adorable like bow and arrow you got here. Here's a battleship, you know?
Exactly. So there's
Yeah.
not that anymore. You still keep like all of your towns and cities and stuff like that, which is, cool. So it's like, it's not a brand new game, but you're kind of starting fresh-ish. So it also breaks it up a little bit. That way you have like, oh, I won the antiquity, I can move on, or maybe I'm not really vibing with this, I'll move on and I'll make another game, right? So it kind of gives you a little bit of a mini win condition where you're like, I had fun with this, I'm going to move on.
Yeah.
Another thing that they changed apparently is that they now have towns versus cities where you have to now manage these towns, which are like mini cities that have their different benefits, which when you can siphon like food over to your main city. So there's another dynamic there. I'm not going to really dive into it because it's really complicated and I'd probably bore people, but they're definitely changing things up from previous Civ games, and it's doing well for some people, and other people like, this isn't the civilization that I know and love. These is too many changes, right? So I guess it depends on kind of how you fall on that. It's
gotta be tough considering the time in between Civ game releases, because if you loved some of the past games so much and you're like, I can't wait for the next version of this, and then those things that you were looking forward to aren't in the next version.
Right.
Are you going to wait 10 more years and see what that Civ 8 is like, This is sort of your generation of Civ game for quite a while. So you can always go back and play the old ones, but that's not really the point. You're here for the new game. So
right.
Yeah, you're kind of stuck with whatever they decided to do. But you're enjoying it.
I am. There are some problems that many people have, is that there's a lot of mechanics aren't explained, or there isn't a great UI to like tell you like why things are happening the way that they're happening. Yeah. For instance, and apparently this was an issue in the other games too, which I don't know why they haven't solved. I was at war with another civilization and I was like, okay, they came to me and they're like, I want to give you this settlement, right? I'm going to give you this settlement so we can go back to being peaceful. I'm like, cool. Where is this settlement? I have no idea where it is. It's just the name. I like try to exit out of it to like then go back into the map and be like, oh, it's that one. I actually do want that one. Perfect.
Yeah.
Nope. It's like if you exit out of this, this exits, this removes the peace talks.
That's a pretty big issue. It's like, we will give you this thing. You're like, what thing? You're like, we can't tell you until you sign the contract. Huh?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And so I accepted and I was like, it's on the other side of the goddamn map. It doesn't even connect to my stuff. Yeah. And so I'm just like left with this stupid town city off in the middle of nowhere that is now just...
They gave you Greenland. And you're like, ah, man.
Yeah. So it's that kind of lack of information for certain things can be kind of frustrating, because you're just like, I literally don't even know what this does.
Yeah.
I just don't know how this functions. You have to kind of go online and see what other people who have played for hundreds of hours already have to say and give you tips that way. So it's
that's not ideal. Not ideal. That is something that I've been thinking about a little bit more from the design side of things, is like, how much of the game do you want to be explained in game, or how much of it do you want to be like this fun mystery where people have to like share information online? They're like, hey, did you know that if you go and do these things or combine these things together, you can make a thing, the new thing, and it's not really explained in the game. You're like, there is sort of a benefit to that, but it sounds like what they're doing here is not like a fun surprise. It's more of a like, oh, you screwed up my session because I didn't understand how it worked.
Remember how I said before, the towns, you can make towns, which can then be upgraded to a city. But originally, if you keep it as a town and then you specialize it, it will then send all of the food that it's generating to your capital, or to like a capital city, which is really nice, because then you can just have like these little towns that will fund the growth of your capital, which is going to give you like the better win conditions, right? Apparently it has to be within 10 like blocks or 10 of the squares. They're not squares. What are they? Octagons?
Hexagons?
Hexagons. There we go. And it doesn't tell you this. And so like I had one that was a little bit too far away, and then I clicked it to its specialization. And I was like, so is it sending it? Like, is it sending the food? It wasn't sending the food. And I was like, well, why is it not sending the food? Like, I don't understand what. And there's nothing that tells you why. It doesn't tell you like it's close enough.
Is Civ 7 early access right now?
No. It's the full game. It did have like if you bought the gold edition, you could play 5 days early. But no, it's the full game.
Okay, yeah. So it's one of those games that's super like there's a lot of depth.
Oh, there's a lot going on. Yeah.
There's so much going on. So I can like understand certain mechanics not being particularly straightforward, but it does suck when you're learning a game and you're like,
yeah,
cool. So like my last 4 hours of strategizing was for a mechanic that was not properly explained. So this whole strategy goes out the window. And
so my recommendation is if you're playing it, just go in, have fun, and then just know that your first run is probably going to be scuffed, and just accept that it's going to be scuffed, and then try again once you've learned a lot of the,
I actually don't know how far I would have stayed with Path of Exile had I not dipped out into like strategy guides and stuff, but I got a huge amount of value from those guides. And it really made the game like much more fun and enjoyable, and allowed me to kind of like cruise through some of the more challenging content. But had I not had those guides that were like, all right, so like your lightning resistance versus lightning penetration versus that plus this, all the math that doesn't even make sense when they're saying it. You're like, that doesn't even add up, dude. And they're like, yeah, it's because how the engine calculates it behind the scenes. And you're like, okay, whatever.
Cool.
None of that stuff would I have discovered on my own. I would have just been reading descriptions and be like, all right, more spell damage. Sounds good to me, and then I'm doing like 1/10 the damage that I could be doing.
That reminds me when I went, it's like, oh, I'll have 2% more crit. No. It's 2% on your crit.
Yeah,
so if you have 10% crit, it only gives you like 0.2. What?
Yeah.
This is nonsense. What do you mean?
You got to look at your crit meter, and then you're like, yeah, I just upgraded for 20% more crit. And then you're like, okay, it says like 10.4 instead of 10.1 or something like that. You're like, huh? It doesn't seem like that big of an increase on my crit chance. It seems pretty low. Those crit builds though, man, those are fun.
I'm sure they're fun.
Yeah.
Especially when they finally get online.
I haven't played in a little while. It's at the point where if I die, I lose like 4 to 5 maps worth of experience, Oh,
wow. So you just don't want to die.
Yeah. And then what's weird about it is I'm just like running maps, like sprinting through them, which is great. It's cool. I'm very powerful. But every now and then you run into a bad guy that has some combination of abilities that's
and
like
get popped.
The absolute kryptonite for you. And by the time you realize that he's going to kill you, you're dead, right? Because you're like, whatever.
Because every other scenario, you're just running through like it's nothing. And then all of a sudden out of nowhere, like you let your guard down and you just explode.
There's not a nice ease into the hard fight, right? You're just like, oh, I'm dead. Shit, there goes 5 maps worth of work. God damn it.
Yeah, that's got to be frustrating.
So it's kind of like trained me into this like sprint through everything, but kind of keep your distance from the big yellow guys, and then just sort of pop them from a distance. You're like, all right, okay, that guy wasn't hard, and then every now and then you see the hard guy, and you're like, oh, it's a good thing I didn't sprint at him and die immediately.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a cautious way of playing, but it's good, I guess.
Yeah. Have you heard anything about Exoborne?
I've played it a few times. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
What
did you think? Oh, what did I think?
Well, okay. Full disclosure, I have been sponsored to play Exoborne.
I was also sponsored, yeah.
I'll say this. I like Shark Mob. I know some of the devs that work there, and I think their what was the game? Blood
Hunt.
Blood Hunt was, I thought that was pretty cool. Like
it was a neat game.
I like games that are mixing up the standard formula, and I think Shark Mob has done a good job of adding like a lot of movement mechanics to their take on a standard formula. Exoborne is interesting. Like I like that the robots are actually challenging. If you like jump into them, you're like, oh, I don't like, why are these guys like just absolutely dominating me right now? So that's kind of cool to see like NPCs on the map that actually screw you over pretty hard in an FPS game.
Just to clarify for people that aren't aware, Exoborne is a new looter shooter coming out, like an extraction, not looter shooter. It is extraction looter shooter.
Yeah,
similar to stuff like Tarkov or what have you, where you go in, you risk your loot, you try to get loot while on the map, be it weapons, be it items on the ground that give you money, make you money, so you can go back and extract, hopefully successfully, and get stronger. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt. And it takes place in the future. You're wearing an exosuit, and you are the Exoborne, I don't know, survivors of some apocalyptic event.
Yeah, the background behind it is actually kind of neat in a fun, silly way. Basically, the world is basically getting destroyed by extreme weather, right? We've screwed up the environment. There's tornadoes and
it's like that movie Geostorm, which I recommend everybody watch with Gerard Butler.
So things go horribly, and then some company comes in and says, we can save you all with our giant weather towers. And they do for a while, but they're protected by these people wearing exosuits, which is what you wear in the game. But then for some reason, this really bad good company turns into a bad company, and then they turn the exosuits on so that they control the people that are wearing it to start shooting civilians. And you're like, whoa, this just got dark fast.
And then they also have super advanced robots, I guess, that they can deploy all over the place and mess you up. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the towers turned off, but only recently they turned on again. And so I kind of lose a little bit of where. Oh
yeah. The story is like, it's challenging to take it seriously. And then you're just like, whatever, we're in exosuits. It's the future. There's a fire tornado. Like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's the thing is the reason why they've emphasized the weather is that there is extreme weather in the game with fire tornadoes and actual just tornadoes all over the place from time to time. And you can use the wind to actually traverse with your parachute, which is a neat mechanic.
I like that part of the game because it's how many FPS games are you like, oh, the wind is on our side, and then you can like open a parachute and like zip across the map.
Sorry.
And when you run into a really good player and they're outmatched, they can escape incredibly fast if they know what they're doing. Like, there has been like if you're a party, I think it's parties of 3 in the game. And so if you're like, hey, there's a guy over there, I've got him pinned down. And if your party takes more than like 5 to 10 seconds to like organize and get ready to push, that guy could be like miles away. Like, it's insane how fast you can move if you're really good at the movement mechanics in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that a lot about it, because a lot of shooters just take the typical boots on the ground approach to everything. And that's fine, but also it gets old after a while. And you're like, give me something new. Give me a new way to beat these guys. Oh, you can like, you might look around, do a 360, be like, we're clear. Let's go fight these NPCs now. And a whole squad of guys can like parachute in on you in like 5 to 10 seconds. And then, so that part of the game is very different, where you're just like, the people who master the movement are going to like dominate in it.
Which could also turn people off, because your casual players can be like, what? I didn't even hear them come in, because you didn't hear them. They just literally dropped in from a parachute.
Movement games do tend to turn off the casual players. There's very few movement games, and I would argue that's kind of part of why the arena shooters never come back, is because anything that's got a heavy focus on movement creates a skill ceiling that's too high for the average player to get into. And it's not to say that gamers can't rise to the occasion, but the introductory experience is way harder than a traditional shooter. So I like a lot of things about it. I like that you can customize your suits a lot. There's a lot you lose when you die. Like, you go through and you're like, cool, let me mod my suit. Let me add all this stuff. Let me mod my gun. Let me add all this stuff. Let me get the most expensive backpack. Let me add all this. And
that's also what happens in Tarkov, right? Like, you come in completely juiced, and if you die, that's it.
It is true. Yeah. It's I had fun running a kit that was like worth 50 grand or whatever, I was like, this is awesome. And then I just like died to some dude who snuck up behind me. I was like, dang it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I was
that's tough.
overall, I thought it was okay. I felt like the world just felt really dead, which I guess is because it's, but it just sort of felt like there was bandit camps strung around everywhere, and that was it. There was I like the robots. The robots were kind of neat, but it just felt like, I don't know. I just wasn't like super, I don't know, invested in the world itself when I was running from point A to point B. It was definitely nowhere near as immersive as like Tarkov or some of the other competition, in my opinion.
I agree with you, and that's pretty much the exact feedback I gave the devs when I played the game. Was like, I thought the world building and the lore and the visuals of the world, not that the visuals themselves were like bad, but the cohesiveness of everything just felt weird, where I couldn't, like, you compare it to another dystopian game like Stalker 2, where you're like, dang, everything in this game is meticulously designed to put me in this mood, this like environment, and not a thing around me is built without that in consideration. And then in Exoborne, you're sort of like, I guess I could be anywhere. And then, and it just doesn't quite feel like the future they're trying to describe to you, you know?
I wish a lot more games would try to go for a claustrophobic vibe. Not that I want things to be claustrophobic, but everything, like, you play these battle royales and they just feel like a battle royale because everything is just so spread out and just, there's nothing like, everything seems small, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. I've never found a game that's really recaptured the scale of PUBG, you know, where you get in a PUBG and you like open up the map and you're literally plotting out miles and miles of like where you're going to go. You know, like, we could cross this bridge here, nobody's camping it, then we could head to this town. You're moving between actual towns in PUBG. It's like massive, and it feels like every other game that's kind of followed in those footsteps of some sort of, whether it's a Royale / extraction style game, has just had to scale it way back. And so you either get these, you get games that feel like they're in between of like a close-knit, close quarter game and some big, massive open world game. And they all kind of feel weird in between, you know? Because I think that's the joy about the really big games, is like, it does become a journey where you're like, you really are covering lots of ground. And then you're like looking at the fuel you have left in your car, and like, you're making all these decisions. And like that, you need a big world to make those kinds of logistic decisions. If it's a small world, you don't have to make too many. You're like, how many decisions do we have to make before we get to that building over there? Not that many. You just kind of run towards the building and then you're there. So, yeah, I think that's kind of an interesting element that a lot of these games have sort of forgotten about, which is like the traversal strategy is a really important part of making that journey more interesting and making the conversation between teammates more interesting, where you're like, no, let's go to point B. No, let's go to point A. And then you have an argument about which one's better and why. And like, a lot of games they're just like, nah, just go to the closest thing. Yeah, there's probably some loot there. Cool.
That's basically kind of how I felt like in Exoborne. It was like, oh, there's just a POI, it's just sitting there. Doesn't really, I don't know. It just didn't feel very organic, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
It's cool that the maps have so much verticality in them, but also the ease of traversal kind of negates some of that verticality to an extent, where you're like, it's cool how much the map goes up and down everywhere, but also I can just grappling hook up to the top of something super quick. Which is, the grapple hook is really neat. I like that mechanic a lot. I think it's a hard game to make because they really are trying to evolve the genre in an interesting way, and I can totally respect them for that. But when you add in brand new mechanics that people aren't used to, you're also creating brand new problems that you have to solve. I will say I've played it twice, and the second time around, they made a huge amount of improvements. So it seems like they're definitely heading in the right direction.
I'm going to definitely keep my eye on it. And I'm still looking forward to seeing its development. They're going on like a 1-month playtest now. So like, they're going to be taking a lot of feedback, and that's great. I'm glad that they're striving to take that feedback.
Yep. No, I wish them luck. And like I said, I like the studio. I think they're kind of one of the few studios that's trying to evolve genres in interesting ways.
Yeah.
So that's good.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Yeah. I don't know if Exoborne has loot boxes in it, but do you remember remember how like a couple of years ago there was all this hubbub about loot boxes and
how could I forget?
Sure. Like a bunch of European countries were voting against banning games with loot boxes in them.
Right.
Overwatch got rid of loot boxes, and a bunch of other games did too.
And now they're back.
Yeah, to start meeting legal standards and stuff. Now loot boxes are back in Overwatch 2, and they are adhering to the new laws. I think these are UK laws. I can't remember. Where they have to disclose all the percentages. And so basically they are random, but all the chances are very clearly labeled. So you're not like hitting a button and going, I hope I get a legendary. And it's like, no, you're going to get a legendary every 1 in 5 boxes or something like that.
Right.
So all that information is there. Basically this week, Australia published, I don't know if Australia publish this or if they're making legal changes based on this research, but there's a research paper published that talked about how loot boxes were like directly correlated with all these negative psychological effects and gambling tendencies and a bunch of other things.
You don't say.
Yeah, more so than like just playing a normal video game that doesn't have loot boxes in it. They're like, yeah, there's a lot of negative side effects and behavioral stuff correlated here. Now, granted, it's one study, but still, it was a study indicating that Australia used that study and moved to rate all games that have loot boxes in them as M for mature. So kids can't go and just buy that video game without parental consent anymore.
I feel like that's fair.
Yeah, I do too. It's just going to be interesting to see what happens with the whole loot box thing, because a lot of countries seem to be progressing towards making it harder to put them in games.
Yeah, I would rather countries be more strict on loot boxes than lax, right? Like if there was an option, I'd rather it be more strict, because I think loot boxes are not good. I don't mind them as an adult
for sure. Yeah,
I don't mind them. Like if like they're in a game, like sure, whatever, right? But a lot of games are geared towards children, and a lot of children are going to be playing video games. And you look over at like Counter-Strike and all that, and there's been there's like a guy who did like an interview with people and like, how did you get involved with CSGO, like lotto sites and stuff like that? It's like, oh, I started gambling when I was 13 in Counter-Strike. I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, and every person he talked to, right? And of course, like it's just this one guy. So it is selective, but like over and over and over again, it's like kids getting involved because of gambling, literally just gambling.
I mean, they're quite literally using the slot machine mechanic in a video game. And this is all like deeply researched psychological studies on how to addict people. And now they're applying it to games, and it's not good. I am for the regulation of this type of stuff. You know, I think they need to crack down on it, because it's ultimately just being driven by capitalism, right? Like even companies that are like, we would rather not do loot boxes, but all the games that are doing loot boxes are kicking our butt in revenue generation, and now we can't afford to compete. So now we have to. It's like, yeah, just regulate it. Just stop. Just knock it off, guys. You know, like it really is too much, because gaming is such a wide industry where you got 40-year-olds playing and you got 12-year-olds playing, and you're like, maybe those 12-year-olds aren't thinking about the games the same way you are, you know? Maybe they're a little more impressionable, a little more susceptible to these somewhat predatory practices that an adult might be able to make a decision that they're going to go and take part in, but a kid, you know, it's...
Agreed.
It's too much. So anyway, Overwatch has got them back.
They're back, baby.
They're adhering to the new laws about them. But even so, I think the laws that they wrote about them are a little too lax. They're like, you have to disclose the win rates. And you're like, okay, what does that do? Like, it's not.
Like at the end of the day, people already knew it was challenging, right? Unless the win rate is so unbelievably small, people are going to be like, oh, it's still a 2% or 3%, whatever. I'll get lucky. Now I know that it was a big jackpot, right?
Yeah, and
I
they
did
wouldn't,
hear that
they
they're
wouldn't
making
be
changes to
bringing
Overwatch
them
2.
back if it wasn't massively lucrative, right? Because it's just going to be a thing that gets more and more regulated over time. That seems to be where it's going. So you would just try and cut your losses and design a new system, but it's so lucrative that they're like, nah, let's just adhere to whatever regulations they have now, and if they update them, we'll just keep updating our loot box system until we need to design something completely different.
Right. Yeah.
Which is why I'm adding loot boxes to my video game, Matt. We just gotta rake in that money,
Could you give me some, because like I'm hoping you'll give me a key to the game, and then when you give me a key, can you also then give me like a big stash of loot boxes too, and then I can like show on my stream and be like, oh man, look at how cool all this loot boxes is. And I won't disclose that you're my friend, and then I'll have to make an apology video later on.
I'll even give you a cutback of it too,
Matt.
Okay,
you'll give me a cutback. So okay.
You don't have to disclose it either. Yeah.
Perfect. I won't disclose it. Then I'll get caught. Then I'll make a video. I'll have like a neighbor's dog come on in, and I'll make an apology video.
And then there will be no ramifications whatsoever.
Oh, it's crazy how that works.
Oh man, gamers, such a proud group of YouTube streaming influencers. It's unfortunately it's a race to the bottom for many of them, but
yes,
we're here keeping it classy, right, Matt?
As I'm covered in sludge.
Yeah, that's how I portray you on the podcast, Matt.
You literally do.
Upstanding individual. Well, I do want to know a little bit about Door Kickers. I have been looking at that game a bit. I haven't jumped in on it, but it looks neat.
So all those games where you play with your buddies first person and you're trying to be all tactical and going through and be like, all right, I'll go left, you go right. And there are games that do that somewhat successfully. I'd say it's going to
Ready or Not
right now. Ready or Not is probably one of the best examples of that. Yeah, Ready or Not slaps. Yeah. But they kind of fall short when you're by yourself. You can't really do that as easily. You can sort of control the AI and have those moments. What's fun about Door Kickers is that it is top down and you control the movement of all of your units by drawing a line on the map where you want that unit to go, and even timing things so that they do it at the same time with the people that are around them. So you control every little detail, the reload, what direction they're going to be looking, all that kind of stuff. And it is a really cool experience when you finally get the controls to work and like wrap your head around how the control functions. My God, was it frustrating for the first hour. Right click is usually for me move in most video games like an
RTS type game where you have to move a unit, right?
Yeah, in this game it's left click, and you can't change it.
Those bastards.
And oh my God, it's like trying to rewire my brain after decades of right click, and it wasn't. Yeah. So I'm like constantly like, no, I want him to stop. God, it was so frustrating. It was so frustrating. But then when you finally get into the groove of all of it, you've got people on doors. You're like, okay, you're going to watch this door. You're going to pie around this side when this happens. You're going to throw in a flashbang. All the while, you got a guy watching the back. It flushes people out the other door, which you already had another guy watching, which takes out the other guy, right? It's really cool once you kind of get into the flow because it really does turn into that tactical experience that a lot of people kind of fantasize about, but you get that in a first-person game.
Yeah. When I saw the trailer, I immediately went like, this is brilliant because since the very first Rainbow Six game where you could actually control your units and time up breaches and stuff, it was all still done mostly from the first person perspective once it started happening. And so you kind of miss all the other action while it's happening. Yep. You're sort of like, oh, I think I heard them breach and flash and hopefully they're doing good. All right, through the door, guys. And then you go in and you just hope that your plan went well. And it's sort of an awkward experience. And it always makes sense when you're playing the new Rainbow Six game or some of the new tactical shooters. The planning phase is always top down and you're drawing stuff on the map. And this guy just went, well, what if we just made the whole game from the top down and then you get to see everybody do all the cool stuff all the time? And it totally makes sense. You're like, yeah, this is how these kinds of games should be done. This is way cooler.
Yeah, and I should clarify that you basically pause the game and then you draw everything. So there's a challenge mode for each map if you want to, where you can draw everything out, have them look a direction like all during that route, be like, okay, once they hit this point, they look left. Once they reach this point, I want them to look right, right? And you can do all of it, the entire map, in that mode where you don't unpause and have your characters do it all at once to successfully take everyone out. I didn't try to do that because it's too complicated, but you can do that once you've actually mastered the mechanics and like how to clear an entire building. It's pretty cool.
That is pretty dope. So yeah, you just have to become the master strategist.
Yeah,
I can see a lot of people enjoying this game. It's cool. I'm glad that it exists. It's like, it's just a good idea that somebody's like executed on. I haven't played it. The controls sound challenging, but it is something that I keep looking at going like, that looks really fun.
Yeah, I'd recommend it for sure. I really enjoyed it.
Cool. I've watched some movies since last we spoke. We needed a popcorn film to watch. We just needed some dumb big Hollywood blockbuster type film. We rented Gladiator 2, Matt, and
oh yes, because the first one needed a sequel.
It definitely needed a sequel. I didn't realize that it was just two gladiators just fighting each other the whole time. That's what the two actually
means. That's where the two came from. It starts an arena and ends in the arena.
Yeah, it's a really long fight. It's obviously a sequel to the Gladiator movie. They really tried to like connect the dots between the two narratives too. I thought they were just gonna tell a totally different Gladiator story, just whatever. It's a different emperors, different 100 years apart,
different
whatever.
Time.
Yeah. Who knows? No. They're connecting it. People are people's kids, and people knew each other's fathers, and there's all kinds of politics and stuff. I think Ridley Scott has really lost it, man.
Oh wow, is it that bad?
I watched it with my wife, and at the end of it, we were just like, what even was that? Like, there's moments in the film that were laughable, where you're just like, they're so cliche.
Got a 71 on Rotten Tomatoes, 82 for, your normal person.
It's wrong. That's wrong.
It's wrong. All of you are wrong.
It's funny because I like all the actors in it.
Those huge actors.
Yeah, it's got really big actors. The performances are fine. But like the movie's just all over the place. I didn't even know who the bad guy was supposed to be for most of the film. I was like, so I guess it's these guys, right? And then it's sort of, they're not really. And then, oh wait, it's that guy, I guess. Like, it was just hard to like vilify any individual in the movie, which made it very weird by the end of it. Cause you're like, get your vengeance on, this guy,
right.
That guy.
You don't have sides, so it's hard to. I
gotcha. Yeah, and there's a bunch of silly speech moments where like they're supposed to, sway the whole crowd by giving some awesome speech,
and you're
just
not
like,
even swayed yourself.
Yeah, you're watching it, you're like, why? Okay, whatever. Like, it was. I don't know. I just think Ridley, did he even direct it? Like Gladiator to director. Yeah, I think it was Ridley Scott. I know he's involved in it at least, but directed by Ridley Scott. He has been just knocking out some crappy films. Like, if you saw Napoleon, man, Napoleon is like,
missed that one.
That is like one of the worst movies ever made, dude. It is insane. He keeps getting these massive budgets, does these huge battle films, which I like. I want to see. Like, the movie opens in a really cool siege on this city where they're like, have these boats with siege towers on them, and the boats literally bump into the walls of the city, and then the siege towers like deploy on the walls. And
that's
then
cool.
Like, that's sick. And like some boats are getting hit by like fire catapults and like exploding, and like, this is dope. It's starting off on like a cool note, big battles, but just like
I will say, because it looks like he directed The Last Duel. I thought The Last Duel was fantastic.
I thought it had a really good fight scene in it. The pacing I had some issues with.
The pacing was rough, and you have to like realize what the movie's going for. But once I realized what it was going for, I was like, okay, this is cool.
I'll give him a pass on the last duel.
I thought it was a neat way of telling, because it wasn't like 3 different stories or 3 of the same story told by 3 different perspectives, and you're like, which one's the real one? And I liked that a lot.
Yeah,
it was good. It was good.
Yep. I don't know. I hope he does good stuff.
No, I agree, because he's on like Prometheus, right? Like Prometheus is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It's amazing because of how bad it is, and I love the production value, but it's a bad movie. Like it's
yeah. Well, and also like I remember watching a thing where he explains what was happening in Prometheus, because a lot of it is just not explained, and you're watching it going like, this dude's like deep into like a mythology and expects us to get all these mythological references that are super subtle, without explaining it in the film.
There's no shot. Yeah. Like the guy at the beginning. I completely forgot about the guy at the beginning.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That was the scene, is him explaining what that was. And when you hear the explanation, you're like, what? We're all supposed to get that at some point. Like, yeah. Did he direct House of Gucci? I haven't seen it, but I heard it's like incredibly bad.
I don't know. I've never even heard of that movie.
Right, yeah. Anyway, poor Ridley. He's made some of my favorite movies, but lately he's been making some real stinkers, man. I can't recommend Gladiator 2. I don't know how it got that high of a rating.
Because it sure did.
I mean, it had a couple of cool fights. Some of the fight scenes were cool in it. Like they did some stuff that I hear actually happened in the Roman Colosseum, where they would like fill it with water and have like pirate ship battles.
Isn't that sick? That's so cool.
So they did some of that, and you're like, that's pretty cool. But it's hard to get that wrapped up. The first movie was so good because you're so wrapped up in this vengeance story for the main character, and you're just like, you don't want him to die, you want him to succeed. Like you're really on the edge of your seat on all the fight scenes. And in this one, you're just like, I don't even know like what this dude's goal is, like who the bad guy is, what the end game is. At the beginning, it tells you that Rome's on the edge of collapse. So you're like, are we even rooting for the Romans at the end of the day? The whole city's going to go down. You just said the whole city's on the verge of collapse anyway. So who cares, really? Right? It's just.
Well, I'm sorry you left disappointed.
Yeah, whatever, man. It's fine for a popcorn film, I think. If you want a bucket of popcorn and you want to see some guys chop each other with swords, then there you go. It's just nowhere near on the same level as the first Gladiator.
As the original?
Yeah.
That's too bad.
Yeah. We did, I started watching that show High Potential because I like Caitlin Olsen from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. She's...
Oh! I thought that show looked really kind of dumb. Is it good? It just looks silly. That's all. Like the premise of it sounded really silly.
Yeah, I think the premise is fine. There's a lot of things that don't line up. Basically, the premise is she's like this savant that is, for whatever reason, she's a single mom of like 3 kids.
It's reviewed well.
Yeah. Single mom of like 3 kids, and she's like a cleaning lady who cleans offices at night or whatever.
And then she becomes a detective.
But she's like also a genius. And I forgot what they call. She's got like an IQ of 160, and it's like she's got all these problems that prevent her from keeping a normal job because of all of her weird little social tics.
Okay. I was gonna say, where's their justification for why she's not working for someone and making lots of money?
That's supposed to be the justification for it. And so she's like living paycheck to paycheck, trying to get her kids through school and all this stressful life and blah, blah, blah. But she's also like a mathematical and observational genius. She's like Sherlock Holmes. And so halfway through the first episode, I'm like, why is this woman struggling for money? She could.
That was why I thought the premise was silly. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, why is she not? Yeah. So
you're telling me that the detectives in this police department she solves a case for them while she's cleaning because she notices some stuff on their little their little board with the yarn tied around suspects and stuff, and she's like, "Oh yeah, you guys got the wrong suspect."
The janitor in the dining room.
And then of course the cops figure out that she's a genius, and they hire her as a consultant, and that's the show. As she kind of goes on as a civilian consultant to like these detective cases and saves people. It's just so far-fetched that this is the first time that somebody's been like, hey, this woman's like incredibly smart. Maybe she could propel our business, our job, our whatever to like new heights. So you're like, all she has to do is like open up a stock ticker and just look at some stuff, and she'll be like making insane investments. You know, the kind of mind that she has is the only part that doesn't quite line up with it. I like the writing. I like Caitlin Olsen. The supporting cast is super weak. Like there's a detective in it that like can't. Basically the guy who gets the second most screen time, which is her partner, cannot deliver a line to save his life, and that makes it hard to watch. So
that's too bad.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to keep watching it. I might, because I like her and she's good in it. But we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check it out now.
Yeah, see if you agree with my my assessment.
Yeah,
I saw Dog Man the movie last night with
Dog Man.
Dog Man. Are you not up on the world of Dog Man? Dog Man.
Dog Man. Oh yeah, I've seen commercials for Dog Man. It's like a kid's movie. Yeah,
it's based on a kid's kind of comic book series. My kid.
He's a detective, but he's a dog.
Yeah. He used to be a man and a dog, but then there's a big explosion, and they had to do a head transplant for the dog's head onto the man's body.
So the man died.
Yeah, they kind of gloss over that. They're like, his head died. I'm like, so he died.
So he died.
Yeah. They're like, no. There's now one person. You're like, no, I'm pretty sure it's a dog with a man's body. Yeah.
That's not how this works out at all. That's funny. So it's trying to be cute with like making it into, a dog and a human together. I got it.
Yeah. The comic books are much more readable. The movie was tough to watch. I will say. Really? It was pretty tough.
Did the kids enjoy it at least?
Yeah, because it's all fart jokes and whatever, Yeah. But it was out of all the when you go and watch a Pixar movie or something like that, there's usually like we watched Moana 2 the other day, and it was like that was much more pleasant and enjoyable to watch. This was like a fever dream, They keep doing that with kid movies where the pacing and the shots and the quick cuts is just crazy, and you're like
ADHD. I mean, that's basically content creation now these days too.
Yeah. So I'm not a fan of that editing style, and a lot of newer films that are aimed at young audiences are like heavily loaded with this fast cut editing style, really quick jokes. Like bam, 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 just that relentless pacing the whole time. And this was a movie that felt just too much, I was like, dang, either I'm getting old or this is like the new generation is so ADHD that this is what they need to stay entertained or something. But it was tough to watch. Not that I think you would go out to watch it because it is.
I will admit I didn't really think about going and doing that.
No. But it was interesting because I watched the animated Ninja Turtles movie like a year or two ago, and I also found the pacing of that editing style to be like just over the top, where you're just like, dang, can we just like have a still cam for like a second and like have people talk to each other without doing some sort of smash cut to somebody like making a sandwich or something? Like just relax for a second.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah. You see anything good lately?
You baby.
Yeah. You finished your novel yet?
No, I haven't been reading it all. I'm in a funk right now.
What kind of Sanderson fan are you,
I'm in a big old funk, and I'm depressed about it. I don't want to talk about it, Level Cap.
You know what you need to get on? You need to get on some of those Paladin romance novels, Matt.
There we go. Yeah, your Fourth Wing series. That apparently is one of the biggest, fastest selling novels ever.
Yeah.
Ever. Like, it is humongous. Who knew? bunch of women and probably men too just can't get enough of saucy romance with dragons. Not that they're romancing the dragons, but like there's dragons.
Yeah. There are dragons, and then there's paladin romance, and
yeah. I just wanted to clarify
a lot of unsheathing. If you get my drift,
unsheathing of the swords.
It's actually pretty funny because my wife didn't want to like give me any details about the book for quite a while, and I was like, "Oh, you seem really into these books. You're super into it." And
I feel like it's a little guilty pleasure, Nothing wrong with that.
Totally fine. Well, it's funny because she's also reading the Sanderson stuff too, and. It's like goes back and forth. It's like, here's the guilty pleasure fantasy. Here's the like hardcore, like if I'm ready to take everything seriously fantasy, which can be hard to read, as I imagine someone over here is experiencing. Like sometimes it's like I didn't get into the second phase of the Red Rising books, is I was just like, dang, I need a break. Like, I need a break, and I just haven't been able to like kind of crack back into it because I'm like, if I'm going to listen to something, I need to laugh or feel good for a while or something,
I hear you.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with some guilty pleasure stuff, though.
Nope. I'll send you over some Fourth Wings for you to get into that. Yeah, man.
But yeah, unfortunately, not much. I haven't been watching a whole lot. I tried watching the movie Flow, which is like about a cat. Just about a cat in the flood, and it just goes on an adventure unwillingly with other animals. And I got 40 minutes in, and I was like, okay, I'm good. So I stopped watching it.
Yeah.
There's no dialogue. It's cute. It's gorgeously animated, but it's literally just a cat going through like scenarios. I'm like,
Yeah,
but it's Oscar nominated, so and some people recommend it, saying it was like their best movie of the year. So we'll see. I could be wasn't the right headspace. I don't know.
It's funny how much your tastes in film and shows can change over the years. Where it's like growing up, it was like action. Show me the coolest action film ever. This is the best movie, and now I'm just like. I'll take political intrigue, please. Like, like,
I don't actually care about action much anymore, unless it's just like dope, the most insane action, or it actually progresses the story and has meaningful consequences to the characters. Yeah, but if it's just action for action's sake, like I'm snoozing almost.
Well, it's like I was saying the other week where I went and watched Avatar 2 again, and. Yeah. The action sequences are so long that like you're just like, dang, man, like can we get a move on? I want to get back to the characters and the story. Come on now. Everybody's out of breath at this point. Like you've been fighting for 45 minutes. Who can stand on their legs at this point?
Yep.
How long can you swing a weapon and run and swim and all that? You're like 45 minutes, you're dead, dude. Like, come on. Like,
yeah.
You're gonna.
It's
have
actually
a
one thing
attack.
I liked about Night Agent is, even though it's not maybe the best show I've ever seen ever, the action when it happened, like you got a guy gets punched in the face and like they get rocked, right? Like there's blood and there's like they're hurting, and I feel like most shows don't do that. Where it's like, no, if someone gets punched in the face over and over again, they ain't getting up for a while. Like we're not gods over here. Just because he looks like a Chad doesn't mean like his brain is any less susceptible to brain damage, So that was refreshing.
Yeah. It's plot armor is overused, I think. Like just way too much, where you're just like, oh, this guy got thrown off of a building and knocked unconscious and blah, but he's fine because he's the protagonist,
Right.
I liked, what movies I felt like struck a fun balance where you're like, we know the protagonist isn't going to die, but for whatever reason, the actor has put us on the edge, is like the Indiana Jones movies where Harrison Ford always looks like so stressed out that he's about to die, like in all these fights. And he looks as scared as you would expect somebody to be afraid. And he's still in all these crazy situations where he's jumping out of airplanes in an inflatable raft and like, just in like crazy firefights and horseback chase scenes and just craziness. And he's not going to die, but you still feel that level of intensity with him. I feel like Tom Cruise is another one of those actors that like brings you into that level of like, oh my God, like I know he's not going to die, but I'm feeling this tension where
the Tom Cruise run.
Yeah. and other actors, like, they just don't have it. And then you're just sitting there, you're like, all right, let's see what he does next. Okay, cool. That was cool, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's usually not the actor. That's the thing. And then when you have an actual actor acting and doing the choreography, you're like, oh, like that's actually them. And you can really feel it. Agreed. Yeah. Also, real quick, don't you find it fascinating how we call it horseback riding?
What would you call it?
Horse riding.
Why
do we got to call it horseback ride? What else are we going to be riding?
You walked into that one, man. The is an interesting point. I don't know. Maybe it evolved from like horse and carriage, horse and chariot.
Maybe.
And then
like,
somebody's like, oh, well,
else?
I'm riding on the back of the horse as opposed to being pulled in my carriage or whatever.
Tomographic friend, he pointed that out to me, and I'm like, you're right. Why do we call it horseback riding? Like, what do you mean? Of course we're riding on the back of the horse. You don't need to clarify it. I thought that was fun.
Yeah. Well, Matt likes to go underslung for whatever reason. It's just
underneath.
So we got to clarify. Other people like to ride on the back of the horse. Matt's he's got his own custom saddle. Yeah.
We ride.
We ride at dawn. Matt, that's not riding. God, Matt. Oh, man.
I feel like you get hit a little bit down there.
Well, yeah. Do they call it horseback riding in Kingdom Come and Deliverance? Or
I don't. Probably. I don't know.
Just say mount up. They probably had a different term for it, you know. I feel like those games could have been. That game could have been used as a good, like, old-timey English educational system, right? Teach everybody how to speak in Old English.
Yeah, that would be obnoxious.
No, I'm down for it. Okay. I want to know.
Well, maybe they can add an entire They have 2.2 million lines of dialogue, and you want them to do it in Old English? Are you kidding me?
Somebody will do it for them. Somebody will mod that for them.
There you go.
Just be like, I've written out the whole thing in Old English, so just hire a voice actor for a weekend.
Yeah, just hire for a week.
That's right. There's like 50 characters or probably more.
Oh, there's... So. Well, the thing is you notice a lot of the same voice actors. It has the Skyrim problem where you'll be like, I know that guy. You're going to another village. You're like, I know that guy. It's a different guy, but I know you.
He's speaking with a higher tone all of a sudden. Yeah. It's, man, have you ever seen like the guys who do the voices for a lot of the animated Marvel shows or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
There's like some voice actors that do like 50 plus characters, and their ability to take on different cadences and accents and stuff, you're just like, dang, these people are talented. Like, it's amazing what some people can do. And then other people are just like, no, this is my voice, and so I can play a character that sounds like this, you know?
Yep.
I don't know. It's interesting. It's a cool talent.
It is.
Well, you want to wrap up the old Potteroonie there?
Sure.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for dropping by. We appreciate you very much. If you want to check out the Patreon link below, go for it. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next Wednesday. Matt is going to leave you with some very important life advice.
Make sure that when you're building a civilization that you get your towns with plenty of food so that they can, when you focus it to farming later on, that you can then send that food to your main capital to jumpstart your economy and use that to specialize in different districts to improve your cultural and scientific needs.
This is the one strategy that Matt has learned in Civilization 7. We've heard about it 3 times throughout the podcast, but if you have a town, you can specialize them in food production and then have them send that food to your capital city. I've never played the game, and I know that this is a winning strategy now. So
I'm happy to help.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.